Her father handed over his pregnant daughter for a debt. What the mountain cowboy gave back shocked everyone. Her father shoved the signed paper across the table and walked out without looking back. Clara stood in the sheriff's office, 7 months pregnant, her husband dead 3 weeks, and now her own blood had traded her like livestock to settle a ranch debt. The mountain cowboy who bought her contract said nothing. He just picked up her bag, nodded toward the door, and waited. The sheriff did not meet her eyes. He folded the contract and placed it in a drawer as if it were any other piece of business. Clara's father had already mounted his horse outside. She watched through the dusty window as he rode away without a glance back toward the building. Her hands shook. She pressed them against her belly and tried to breathe. The man who had signed for her stood near the door. He was tall and weathered, his face lined by sun and wind. His hat was worn but clean, his boots were scuffed. He did not smile, he did not frown, he simply waited. "I'm Nathaniel Kane," he said. His voice was low and even. "We have a long ride." Clara nodded because she did not know what else to do. She followed him outside. Her legs felt heavy. The baby shifted inside her and she winced. Nathaniel glanced at her but said nothing. He helped her onto the wagon seat without touching her more than necessary. Then he climbed up beside her and took the reins. They left town in silence. The road climbed into the hills. The air grew cooler. Clara watched the trees thicken around them. She had never been this far from town. Her husband had worked in the mill. They had lived in a small house near the river. He had been kind to her. Then the fever took him and everything fell apart. Her father had debts. The bank wanted payment, and Clara, pregnant and widowed, became the solution. Nathaniel did not ask her questions. He did not try to comfort her. He kept his eyes on the road and his hands steady on the reins. Once he offered her a canteen of water. She drank and handed it back. He nodded. The sun was low when they reached the ranch. It sat in a clearing surrounded by pines. The house was small but solid. A barn stood nearby. Chickens scratched in the yard. Smoke rose from the chimney. Nathaniel stopped the wagon and climbed down. He held out a hand to help her. Clara took it briefly and stepped down. Her back ached. Her feet were swollen. She stood in the yard and looked at the house that was supposed to be hers now, though she knew it would never truly be hers. "You'll sleep in the back room," Nathaniel said. "I'll show you." He carried her bag inside. Clara followed. The house smelled like wood smoke and bacon. It was warm, it was clean, but it was not welcoming. Nathaniel led her down a narrow hall and opened a door. The room was small. There was a bed, a chair, and a window. "You'll help with cooking and chores," he said. "Nothing heavy, not until after the baby." Clara nodded. Nathaniel left her there. She heard his boots on the wooden floor, then the sound of the front door closing. She sat on the bed and stared at the wall. She did not cry. She had no tears left. Clara woke to the sound of small voices outside her door. She sat up slowly, her body stiff from the unfamiliar bed. The voices were young, girls. She dressed and smoothed her hair as best she could. When she opened the door, 2 pairs of eyes stared up at her. The girls were identical. They had dark braids and serious faces. They could not have been older than 8. "You're the lady Papa brought home," one of them said. "I'm Clara," she said quietly. The girls did not answer. They looked at her belly, then at each other. One of them turned and walked away. The other lingered a moment longer, then followed her sister. Clara found the kitchen. Nathaniel was already outside. The girls sat at the table with bowls of porridge in front of them. Clara stood in the doorway, unsure. "There's more on the stove," one of the girls said without looking up. Clara served herself a small portion and sat at the far end of the table. The girls ate in silence. She did the same. When they finished, they carried their bowls to the wash basin and left the house. Clara washed the dishes. She wiped down the table. She swept the floor. No one told her to, she simply did it. Through the window, she could see the barn and the mountains beyond. The morning was cold and clear. Chickens clucked in the yard. Somewhere in the distance, she heard the rhythmic sound of an axe striking wood. Nathaniel came in at midday. He looked at the clean kitchen and nodded once. "The girls are Lily and Rose," he said. "Rose is the one who talks more." Clara nodded. "You don't need to do all this," he added. "Just what you can manage." "I can manage," Clara said. He studied her for a moment, then left again. That afternoon, Clara gathered eggs from the henhouse. One of the hens pecked at her hand, and she pulled back quickly. Rose appeared from behind the barn. "That's Gertrude," Rose said. "She doesn't like strangers." Clara looked at the girl, surprised. Rose shrugged and disappeared again. It was not much, but it was the first time one of the girls had spoken to her without being asked. The days took on a rhythm. Clara rose early, she cooked, she cleaned, she stayed out of the way. The girls were polite but distant. They answered her questions with short words. They did not smile at her. Nathaniel was the same. He worked from dawn to dusk. He spoke only when necessary. One evening, Clara heard the girls whispering in the hall. She was folding blankets in her room. The door was cracked open. "She's really big," one of them said. "Papa said she's going to have a baby. Do you think she'll stay?" "I don't know, Mama didn't." Clara's hand stilled. She did not move. The girl's footsteps faded down the hall. She sat on the bed and pressed a hand to her belly. The baby kicked. She closed her eyes. That night she lay awake in the dark. The house creaked around her. Wind pressed against the window. An owl called from somewhere in the pines. She thought about her husband. She thought about her father's face when he signed the paper. She thought about the two little girls who had lost their mother and now had a stranger in their home. She did not belong here, she knew that, but she had nowhere else to go. The next morning, Rose appeared in the kitchen while Clara was kneading dough. The girl stood in the doorway, watching. "Can I help?" Rose asked. Clara looked up, surprised. "You can set the table." Rose nodded and moved to the cupboard. She took down 3 plates, then paused. She glanced at Clara, then took down a 4th. She set it at the end of the table where Clara usually sat. Clara's throat tightened. She nodded her thanks. Rose said nothing, but her expression softened just a little. It was not much, but it was something. When Nathaniel came in for breakfast, he noticed the 4th plate. He looked at Clara, then at Rose. He did not say anything, but he sat down and ate with them, and for the first time since Clara had arrived, the table did not feel quite so cold. 3 weeks passed. The days grew warmer. Clara's belly grew heavier. She moved more slowly now, but she did not stop working. She baked bread. She mended clothes. She tended the small vegetable garden behind the house. The twins watched her from a distance at first, then began to drift closer. Lily brought her a cup of water one afternoon while Clara was pulling weeds. She did not say anything. She just set the cup down on the porch step and walked away. Clara drank it and felt something loosen in her chest. Rose was bolder. She asked questions. "When will the baby come?" she asked one morning while Clara was stirring a pot of stew. The kitchen smelled like onions and salt pork. "Soon," Clara said. "Maybe a month." "Will it cry a lot?" "Probably." Rose considered this. "Babies are loud." "They are," Clara agreed. Rose nodded and went back to her drawing. She was sketching a horse on a piece of old paper. Clara glanced over her shoulder and saw that it was surprisingly good. "That's beautiful," Clara said. Rose looked up startled. "Really?" "Really?" A small smile touched Rose's face. She went back to her drawing with renewed focus. Clara felt warmth spread through her. It was the first time one of the girls had smiled at her. Lily was quieter, but she was watching too. A few days later, Clara found her sitting on the porch with a torn dress in her lap. She was trying to thread a needle, but her hands were too small. Clara sat down beside her. "May I?" Clara asked. Lily handed her the needle without a word. Clara threaded it and showed her how to make small, even stitches. Lily watched carefully, then tried it herself. Her stitches were crooked, but she did not give up. Clara sat with her until the tear was mended. "Thank you," Lily said quietly. "You're welcome," Clara said. That evening, Lily set the table without being asked. She put Clara's plate in the same spot Rose had placed it days before. Clara caught Nathaniel watching from the doorway. His expression was unreadable, but he did not look displeased. The twins began to eat meals with Clara more often. They asked her about the baby. They asked her what it was like to be married. They asked her if she missed her father. Clara answered honestly but carefully. She did not tell them about the contract. She did not tell them she had been traded like a horse. One afternoon, Lily scraped her knee while playing near the barn. She came inside crying, and Clara cleaned the wound and wrapped it in a clean cloth. Lily leaned into her while she worked, and Clara felt the girl's small body relax against hers. It was such a simple thing, but it made Clara's eyes sting. Nathaniel came in just as Clara was tying off the bandage. He looked at his daughter, then at Clara. "Is she all right?" he asked. "She will be," Clara said. He nodded, "Thank you." It was the first time he had thanked her for anything. Clara did not know what to say, so she just nodded back. That night Clara sat on the porch and watched the sun set behind the mountains. The air was cool and sweet. The smell of pine was strong. Crickets began their evening song. The twins were inside, giggling over something Rose had drawn. Nathaniel was in the barn, finishing the evening chores. Clara rested a hand on her belly and felt the baby move. She still did not know if this place would ever truly be home. She still did not know if she would ever be more than a burden to Nathaniel or a stranger to his daughters. But for the first time since her husband died, she felt something other than shame. She felt useful, she felt needed, and that was enough for now. When Nathaniel came back from the barn, he paused at the bottom of the porch steps. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once before going inside. Clara stayed outside a little longer, listening to the night sounds. Stars began to appear overhead, bright and cold. She was still an outsider, but the walls around her were beginning to crack. 2 more weeks passed. Winter was coming. Clara could feel it in the air. The mornings were colder now. Frost coated the grass. The twins wore heavier shawls, and Nathaniel chopped wood every evening to keep the fire going. The smell of wood smoke hung in the air from morning to night. Clara's belly had grown so heavy she could barely bend over. She moved carefully, one hand always pressed to the small of her back, but she did not stop working. She cooked. She cleaned. She mended. She did everything she could to prove she was not a burden. Nathaniel noticed. She could tell by the way he looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention. One evening, she found that the latch on her door had been fixed. She had not mentioned it to anyone, but it had been sticking for days. Now it opened smoothly. She knew it was Nathaniel. A few days later, an extra quilt appeared on her bed. It was old but clean, and it was thick enough to keep out the cold. The fabric was soft and smelled faintly of cedar. Clara ran her fingers over it and felt her throat tighten. Nathaniel did not say anything about it. He did not explain. He just left it there and went about his work. The twins had grown comfortable with her now. They chattered through meals. They asked her to help with their lessons. They showed her their drawings and their sewing projects. Rose told her stories about the ranch, and Lily shyly asked if Clara would braid her hair. Clara braided it carefully, her fingers gentle. Lily sat perfectly still, and when Clara finished, the girl reached up to touch the braid and smiled. "Thank you," Lily whispered. Clara's heart swelled. She had not realized how much she missed being needed, how much she missed being more than a mistake or a burden. One evening, after the girls had gone to bed, Nathaniel sat down at the table across from Clara. She had been folding dish towels. She looked up, surprised. He usually went straight to bed after the day's work. "The ranch is hard work," he said. His voice was quiet but steady. "But it's honest." Clara nodded. She did not know what to say. You've been working hard, Nathaniel continued. More than you need to. I want to help, Clara said. He looked at her for a long moment. His eyes were gray and calm. You don't owe me anything beyond what was written in that contract. Clara's hand stilled. She met his eyes. I know. I signed that paper because your father had no one else to turn to, Nathaniel said. His jaw tightened slightly. I didn't sign it for you. I signed it so you'd have a roof and food. That's all. Clara felt something crack open inside her. She had spent weeks believing she was property, believing she had been bought like a cow or a plow, but Nathaniel's words were clear. He did not see her that way. He never had. Thank you, she said quietly. Nathaniel nodded. He stood and walked to the door, then paused. The girls talk about you, he said. They say you're kind. Clara did not know how to respond. Nathaniel did not wait for an answer. He went outside, and Clara heard his boots on the porch, then the sound of him chopping more wood. The steady rhythm of the axe was strangely comforting. She sat alone at the table and pressed a hand to her belly. The baby kicked, strong and insistent. Clara closed her eyes and let herself feel it. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine a future that was not defined by shame. The next morning, Rose asked if the baby would be a boy or a girl. Clara said she did not know. Lily said she hoped it was a girl so they could teach her things. Rose said she hoped it was a boy so he could help with the horses. They argued playfully, and Clara laughed. It was a small sound, but it was real. Nathaniel heard it from across the room. He glanced over, and for just a moment, Clara thought she saw the corner of his mouth lift. It was not quite a smile, but it was close. That night, Clara lay in bed with the extra quilt pulled up to her chin. The fire crackled in the main room. The house was warm. Outside, the wind moved through the pines with a low, steady sound. The baby moved inside her, and Clara rested her hand over the spot and whispered to it softly. We're going to be all right, she said. She did not know if it was true, but she wanted to believe it, and for the first time she thought she might. A week later, the deputy arrived on a cold afternoon in late November. Clara was in the kitchen when she heard the horse outside. She wiped her hands on her apron and looked out the window. A man in a brown coat and hat was dismounting near the barn. Nathaniel walked out to meet him. Clara stayed inside, but she moved closer to the window. The twins were in the main room, playing with a set of wooden blocks Nathaniel had carved for them. They did not notice the visitor at first. The deputy and Nathaniel spoke for several minutes. Clara could not hear their words, but she saw the way Nathaniel's shoulders stiffened. She saw the way the deputy glanced toward the house. Her stomach turned. When Nathaniel came back inside, his face was hard. He removed his hat and set it on the table. The deputy followed him in. Clara stepped back, her hands instinctively moving to her belly. Ma'am, the deputy said, nodding to her. He looked uncomfortable. This is Deputy Warren, Nathaniel said. His voice was flat. He's here to deliver a message. The deputy cleared his throat. There's been talk in town, he said. About you, ma'am, and about Mr. Kane here. Clara's chest tightened. What kind of talk? Your father's been saying things, the deputy said carefully. He's telling people that Mr. Kane bought you for improper purposes. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. She gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. That's a lie, Nathaniel said sharply. I know it is, the deputy said quickly. I'm not here to accuse anyone, I'm here to warn you. People are listening to him. The sheriff thought you should know. Rose and Lily had stopped playing. They were staring at the adults now, their faces pale and confused. What does he mean, Papa? Rose asked. Nothing, Nathaniel said firmly. Go to your room. But now. The girls stood and hurried down the hall. Clara heard their door close softly. She wanted to follow them. She wanted to disappear. I'll leave, Clara said, her voice shook. I'll go back to town. I don't want to bring shame to your home. No, Nathaniel said. But, no, he turned to face her fully. His eyes were steady and unyielding. You've done nothing wrong. Your father's the one who should be ashamed. Clara's throat burned. She looked down at her hands. She's been working here honestly, Nathaniel said to the deputy. She's been helping with the girls and the house. That's all. If people want to twist that into something ugly, that's their problem. The deputy nodded slowly. I believe you, Nathaniel, but you know how folks are. Once the talk starts, it spreads. Let it spread, Nathaniel said. I'm not sending her away because people don't know how to mind their own business. The deputy sighed. All right, I've said my piece, just thought you should know. He nodded to Clara again. Ma'am, I'm sorry this is happening. Clara could not speak. She just nodded. The deputy left. Nathaniel stood by the door for a long time after he was gone. Clara stayed by the table, her hands trembling. She felt the weight of everything pressing down on her. She felt the shame she had carried since her father signed that paper to come flooding back. I don't want to cause you trouble, she said quietly. Nathaniel turned to look at her. You didn't cause this, your father did. But Clara, he said her name for the first time since she had arrived. It stopped her cold. You've been here for weeks. You've worked hard. You've been good to my daughters. I'm not going to let your father ruin that because he's too much of a coward to face what he did. Clara's vision blurred. She blinked hard and looked away. You're not leaving, Nathaniel said. His voice softened just a little. Not unless you want to. Clara shook her head. I don't want to. Then it's settled. He walked past her and down the hall to check on the girls. Clara stood alone in the kitchen. Her hands were still shaking, but something inside her had shifted. Nathaniel had defended her. He had stood up for her when no one else ever had. She pressed a hand to her belly and took a slow breath. The baby kicked, strong and insistent. Clara closed her eyes and steadied herself. She did not know what would happen next. She did not know if the town would come after them or if her father would continue spreading lies. But she knew one thing. Nathaniel Kane was not a man who backed down. And for the first time in her life, someone was standing beside her instead of walking away. That night after the girls were asleep, Clara heard Nathaniel pacing on the porch. His boots moved back and forth, slow and heavy. She did not go out with him. She knew he needed to think. But she listened to his footsteps and felt a strange sense of safety she had never expected to find. 5 days later, the pains started 2 weeks early. Clara woke in the middle of the night with a sharp cramp that took her breath away. She sat up slowly, her hand pressed to her belly. Another pain followed, deeper this time. She knew what it meant. She stood carefully and made her way to the main room. Nathaniel was asleep on a cot near the fireplace. He had started sleeping there after the deputy's visit, as if keeping watch. Clara hesitated, then touched his shoulder. He woke instantly. What is it? The baby, Clara said. Her voice was tight. It's coming. Nathaniel was on his feet in seconds. He pulled on his boots and grabbed his coat. I'll ride to town for the midwife. It's the middle of the night, Clara said. I don't care. He looked at her, his face serious. You'll be all right. I'll be back before you know it. He left before she could argue. Clara heard the horse galloping away into the darkness. She stood in the empty house, gripping the back of a chair as another contraction rolled through her. She breathed through it and tried not to panic. The twins appeared in the hallway, rubbing their eyes. What's happening? Rose asked. The baby's coming, Clara said. Your father went to get help. Lily's eyes went wide. Is it going to be all right? Yes, Clara said, though she was not sure. Go back to bed, I'll be fine. But the girls did not move. They stayed close to her, watching with worried faces. Clara did not have the strength to send them away. Nathaniel rode hard into town. The cold air bit at his face. The horse's hooves pounded the frozen ground. The streets were dark and empty. He went straight to the midwife's house and pounded on the door. Mrs. Calloway answered, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. It's Clara, Nathaniel said. The baby's coming." Mrs. Calloway nodded and went to gather her things. Nathaniel waited outside, pacing. His breath came out in white clouds. The general store was across the street, and he saw lamplight in the window. Someone else was awake. Then the door opened. Clara's father stepped out. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. He had not seen the man since the day he signed the contract. He had not wanted to. But now they stood face to face in the cold street, and Nathaniel felt anger rise in his chest. "You," Clara's father said. His voice was hard. "I heard you were keeping her." "I'm not keeping her," Nathaniel said. "She's living at my ranch because you sold her like livestock." A few people had gathered now. The blacksmith, the storekeeper, a couple of women Nathaniel did not know. They stood in doorways and watched. Lamplight spilled into the street. "I did what I had to do," Clara's father said. "I had debts." "You had a daughter," Nathaniel said. His voice was low and steady, but there was steel in it. "A pregnant daughter who just lost her husband, and you traded her away to save your own skin." "She's got a roof over her head, doesn't she?" Clara's father shot back. "She's better off than she was." "No thanks to you." The crowd had grown. More people had come out of their homes, drawn by the sound of voices. Nathaniel saw them watching. He saw the judgment in their eyes. He knew what they had been saying. He knew what they believed. "You bought her," Clara's father said loudly, playing to the crowd now. "You bought a pregnant woman. What kind of man does that?" "The kind who didn't want to see her starve," Nathaniel said. "The kind who gave her work and a place to stay. The kind who didn't abandon her when things got hard." He took a step forward. Clara's father took a step back. "She's been at my ranch for weeks," Nathaniel said. "She's cooked for my daughters. She's mended their clothes. She's worked harder than anyone I know, and my daughters love her." He let that sink in. The crowd was silent now. "If you've got a problem with that," Nathaniel said, his voice cutting through the cold air, "then say it to my face. Right here, right now." No one spoke. Clara's father looked around, but no one met his eyes. The women in the crowd were whispering to each other. The blacksmith shook his head and went back inside. Clara's father turned and walked away. He did not look back. Nathaniel stood in the street, his breath coming hard. Mrs. Calloway appeared beside him with her bag. "Let's go," she said quietly. They rode back to the ranch in silence. Nathaniel's hands were tight on the reins. His mind was spinning, but his purpose was clear. He had said what needed to be said. He had stood up for Clara in front of the whole town, and he would do it again if he had to. When they arrived, Clara was in the back room. The twins were with her, holding her hands. She was pale and sweating, but she managed a weak smile when she saw Nathaniel. "You came back," she whispered. "I told you I would," Nathaniel said. Mrs. Calloway took over. She sent Nathaniel and the girls out of the room. They waited in the main room, listening to Clara's labored breathing and the midwife's calm instructions. The twins sat close to their father, their faces tight with worry. Nathaniel put his arms around them and held them close. Hours passed. The sun began to rise. Golden light crept through the windows. And then, finally, they heard it, the sharp, piercing cry of a newborn baby. Mrs. Calloway opened the door. She was smiling. "It's a girl," she said, "a healthy girl." Nathaniel stood. The twins jumped to their feet. Mrs. Calloway let them into the room. Clara was propped up on pillows, exhausted but smiling. In her arms was a tiny, red-faced baby wrapped in a blanket. The twins crowded close. "She's so small," Lily whispered. "Can we hold her?" Rose asked. "Soon," Clara said. Her voice was hoarse but full of warmth. She looked at Nathaniel. "Thank you." Nathaniel nodded. He did not trust himself to speak. He stood in the doorway and watched the scene before him. Clara with her newborn daughter, his own daughters leaning in clothes, their faces full of wonder. And he knew in that moment that everything had changed. Spring came slowly. The snow melted. The grass turned green. Wildflowers bloomed along the fence line, yellow and purple and white. The ranch came alive with birdsong and the smell of fresh earth. Clara's daughter, named Emma, was 2 months old. She was a quiet baby, content to sleep in the cradle Nathaniel had built by hand. The twins adored her. They took turns rocking the cradle and singing soft songs. They argued over who got to hold her first. They brought her wildflowers and smooth stones they found by the creek. Clara watched them with a full heart. Nathaniel had changed too. He no longer kept his distance. He ate meals with them every day. He sat by the fire in the evenings and listened to the girls chatter about their day. He held Emma when Clara needed to rest, his large hands surprisingly gentle. One evening, after the girls had gone to bed, Nathaniel sat down across from Clara at the table. Emma was asleep in the cradle nearby. The fire crackled softly. "There's something I need to tell you," Nathaniel said. Clara looked up, her heart suddenly tight. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Clara recognized it immediately. It was the contract her father had signed. Nathaniel set it on the table between them. "I burned the original weeks ago," he said. "This is just a copy the sheriff gave me. I wanted you to see it one last time before I burn this one too." Clara stared at the paper. She did not touch it. "You're not bound to anything," Nathaniel said. "You never were as far as I'm concerned. You're free to leave whenever you want." Clara's throat tightened. She looked at the cradle where Emma slept. She looked at the doorway where Lily and Rose had stood just minutes before, giggling over something silly. She looked at Nathaniel, this quiet man who had given her back her dignity when no one else would. "I don't want to leave," she said softly. Nathaniel met her eyes. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." He nodded slowly. Then he picked up the contract, walked to the fireplace, and tossed it into the flames. They watched it curl and blacken and disappear. "Then you're home," Nathaniel said. Clara felt tears sting her eyes. She blinked them away and smiled. "Thank you." Nathaniel did not answer with words. He just nodded and sat back down. They stayed like that for a while, sitting in comfortable silence while the fire burned low and Emma slept peacefully. The next morning, Rose called Clara by her first name for the first time. It was casual, easy, as if it had always been that way. Lily did the same at breakfast. Clara's heart swelled. Nathaniel carried Emma outside to show her the horses. The twins followed, laughing and talking over each other. Clara stood on the porch and watched them. The sun was warm on her face. The mountains rose in the distance, still capped with snow. A hawk circled overhead. The air smelled like pine and wildflowers. She had been traded like property. She had been humiliated and cast aside. But here, on this quiet ranch in the mountains, she had found something she thought she had lost forever. She had found her place, she had found her family, and she had found herself again.